Dvishu Nityam Bhagavata Seva Bhagavati Tamashuki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Nigamaka Padargari Tamparam Shukamakaramita Drapisamitam Pibata Bhagatam Rashamarayam Mahora Hora Shikabuvi Bhaka Nigamaka Padargari Krishna Sadama Pagate Damakani Karonashta Dushamasha Paranako Dunoditam Tamapiyadabhishuta Vishutam Bibu Samapyadana Virambiduksharam Prakyayidahur Madhanam Sanklesha Nirvanam Usani Nandadam Anarta Pashamam Shakshad Bhakti Yogam Logasha Janato Chakre Satpada Samitam Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chevanarottamam Devam Sarasatim Vyasavatato Jayari Namam Vishnu Panaya Krishna Pasaya Bhutare Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Shamita Namani Stay Sarasati Devi Guravani Pachari Vishesasani Varivaskadari Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Good morning, Natasha. When I posted our talk from yesterday on YouTube, there's a place for putting notes that everybody can see. So I posted your verses from yesterday. I thought they were really nice. Thank you for that contribution. And it'll achieve semi more immortality because of me. As long as YouTube lasts, it'll be up there for the not many, not thousands, not tens of thousands, not hundreds, but the dozens. Not even dozens, maybe. Yeah, a few dozen people that listen to my classes. So, anyway, thank you for that. Thanks to Rob for being on Zoom as well. We got a little late start tonight because I got a call from Ingram, Texas. Beth Rumbo orders colors from me year after year after year. So I had to take the time to take our credit card information. Send that out a little bit later today. I'm just going to turn the heater down. It's starting to make some noise. Okay, and I'm going to Texas on Friday. There's my old friend Batsal. Batsal and Medua and I were all together in Utah originally. They had both bought houses, and we made a threesome until they decided they would sell their houses and move somewhere else. But we were together, all of us, in Spanish Fork, Utah, back in the day for a few years. And we'll be together again this weekend in Sealy, Texas for Festival Life. Vatsal lives there with his wife Shashikala. And Madhua will be part of the Traveling Festival of India, which Vatsal has invited to set up in Levine Park there, downtown Sealy. Once again, Festival Life. A sort of a reunion of sorts between Vatsal, myself, and Madhua. And there'll be also some of the best kirtan singers from the wonderful Houston, Texas come out. And Vatsal's granddaughter, Krishangi, who's trained very rigorously in India under the Bharatanatyam dance from style, she'll be on hand too. And TK, another one of our old-time friends from way back. So it'll be a nostalgic, old Lang Syne sort of a weekend. I don't know how many people are going to come to the festival in Sealy, Texas, but, we'll at least get quality and hopefully quantity too. I'm not ruling anything out. Anything's possible in the kingdom of the Lord. Another thing I have to share with you is that I believe it was Sunday morning, a great stalwart Prabhupada man named Gopal Krishna Goswami passed from this world. I was surprised he was only 2 years older than me. I'm 77, he was 79, but he had been in quite frail health for a number of years. You look at the videos of him, kind of bent over and kind of very tentative in his walking. And in fact, he fell Saturday in the bathroom. I don't think the fall caused his demise. I think that his liver and vital organs were failing, and that's why he fell, because the doctors, even after putting in a pacemaker and doing dialysis and all, they weren't able to save him. But he joined ISKCON way back in the day, took sannyas, 1974, almost 50 years he's been a sannyasi and a staunch Prabhupada man. His will and testament, will and testament was published online. He had not a penny to his name after having handled millions and millions of dollars for Prabhupada, been the spearhead behind publishing literally millions and millions of books in all the Indian languages. He had many, many disciples. Locally here, Ras Vilas and Prashant, Ras Vilas and Pradyumna Narayan and his wife are all disciples of Gopal Krishna Maharaj. Both Ras Vilas and Pradyumna Narayan are professors at the University of Utah. Ras Vilas has flown back to India to be part of the cremation services that took place yesterday. Under his guidance in the Delhi area, in the northern India area, there were 17 magnificent temples built from the ground up. 17. That's amazing. He says in his last will and testament, I had not strayed one step outside of the mission of Prabhupada. He always worked very cooperatively with the GBC. Many people have issues with the GBC. GBC meetings are known for sometimes being contentious, and some of the GBC members are called petty. But Gopal Krishna Maharaj recognized that the GBC was the managing authority that Prabhupada wanted to guide ISKCON into the future, and so he always worked very cooperative. He never took issue with the GBC. He might have had private members and meetings and discussions with individual members, but he never challenged the GBC, never departed from whatever the final decisions of the GBC were. And unlike many other people who could have developed a bit of an offensive mentality after sitting in the GBC meetings, after being sitting in GBC meetings for 50 years, he never committed one single Vaishnava aparad. He never said one offensive thing to a single devotee. He was the kind of devotee that wasn't flashy. He wasn't a superstar. He just did his work quietly and self-effacingly, without a lot of personal glitter. And yet, when he passed, it's as if there was a huge hole left in the fabric. His accomplishments were stupendous. His accomplishments were amazing. And if you were to ask him, his potency would have derived from, his power would have come from just simply, very strictly following Srila Prabhupada. Myself, I like imaginative endeavors, imaginative ventures. I resonate with Prabhupada when he said, tax your brains, you are young, intelligent Western boys and girls. Tax your brains to spread Krishna consciousness. That's my clarion call. Gopal Krishna might have been somewhat opposite me in that respect, because some might have called him unimaginative. And yet, how is it that if that's the case, 17 gorgeous temples were built under his direction and millions of books were distributed? So it seems to me, although during his lifetime he was underestimated to some degree, we're, to look at the list of his accomplishments and the fact that he, in doing all that, he never offended, even mentally, another Vaishnav, no matter what their faults or shortcomings might have been, is amazing. And all that would indicate that he's now at the lotus feet of Krishna in the spiritual world. So our condolences to his disciples here in the Utah area, Ras Vilas Prabhu, Pradyumna Maya, and his wife. At the same time, to follow his footsteps, not very difficult. Just follow the GBC, follow the directions of the GBC, avoid committing Vaishnava aparad. If you're in the renounced order of life, have no personal possessions, have nothing in your name so you don't become distracted by the call of wealth and women, and go back home, back to Godhead. When you take the example of Gopal Krishna Maharaj, Krishna consciousness, it's so simple. It's so easy. And at the same time, it's very difficult to walk the straight and narrow, as he did. This is Transcendental Tuesday, and our title is Everything is One and Different. You thought I'd jump ship there for a moment, hadn't you? We talked yesterday extensively about how it is that in these third and fourth verses in the third chapter of the eighth canto of the Bhagavatam, Gajendra smashes the Mayavadi philosophy. Mayavadi philosophy is a philosophy that everything is one. In the Chaitanya Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which is only the second book that Prabhupada published after the Bhagavad Gita, when I joined, we had first the Gita, the blue Gita from Macmillan, and then the next book we had was the Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada didn't know how long he would live, and so he published books in order of their importance, that should he depart, should he leave, he would give us the books in order of number 1, number 2, and number 3 importance. So number 1 is the Bhagavad Gita. Number 2, you would have thought, with Bhagavatam, but no, the second book he published was Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And then I believe the Krishna book was published afterwards. So in order of priority, the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which is a summary study of the Chaitanya Charita, which ended up being published during Prabhupada's lifetime, 17 volumes. And the Krishna book is a summary study of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which ended up being published and translated by published up to the 10th canto. Rita and Das Goswami finished the 11th and 12th cantos after Prabhupada left his body in 1977. So in the Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, there's an explanation there. The Mayavadis, those who think that everything is one and there's no separate transcendent divinity apart from this material phenomenal and noumenal world, they argue, and they're mostly followers of Sankaracharya, they argue that everything in this material world is from Brahman, the homogeneous, undifferentiated energy of the Lord. And wherever we see varieties, wherever we see individuals, whether we see different species, different members of those species, we see mountains, we see beaches, we see oceans, we see jungles, we see deserts. All that is simply a transformation of something which, in its original state, it has no variety, no distinctions in it whatsoever. So Shankaracharya taught his disciples essentially that everything is one. It simply appears temporarily in different illusory shapes and forms. But in due course of time, all the shapes and forms dissolve and everything comes back into oneness. And one is spirit. Unlike the Buddhists, who might also say everything is one, the Buddhists believe that ultimate reality is zero, whereas the impersonalists believe that ultimate reality is spirit. But really, when you break it down, there's not much difference between the two. They both come to nihilism and almost atheism, because in the case of the Buddhists, it's very nihilistic, and in the case of the Mayavadi or the impersonalists, there's no personality of Godhead with whom we can have a loving, intimate relationship. So whether you take the impersonalist who acknowledges spirit and will even talk about God, but an impersonal version of God, or you take the Buddhist who wants to bring everything and nothing, ultimately, there's no individuality, there's no supreme personality, there's no separate existence from this material world. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took the philosophy of Sankaracharya, that everything is one. He accepted that in one sense everything's one, because everything is generated from spirit. But where is spirit? Where is spirit generated from? In other words, everything is generated from the Brahman effulgence, the spiritual energy of the Lord. Just like everything in this material world is generated from sunshine. Without sunshine, you wouldn't have greenery, you wouldn't have oceans, you wouldn't have deserts, you wouldn't have jungles, you wouldn't have the raw resources on which we build civilizations and maintain them. Without the sunshine, nothing could exist. Everything would be null and void. So it can be said that from the sunshine, which is homogeneous, undifferentiated, energy, all the varieties of this material world come. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't stop with the sunshine. He asks, where is the sun? If the sunshine produces so many different varieties and the sunshine itself appears to be without variety, then there is a prior cause. There is a source of the sunshine who is full of variety and who projects that variety into this material world through the agency of the sunshine. In other words, the sunshine may not appear to have much variety, but through the sunshine, embedded within the sunshine, because what is the sunshine? It's millions and millions of glittering, effulgent spiritual particles, each and every one of which has personality. Each and every one of which can be identified individually. However infinitesimal they are, they can all be picked out and identified individually. And so Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy is that everything comes from Brahman. We don't dispute that, but then Brahman comes from the all beautiful, all knowledgeable, all wealthy, all famous, all strong, and all humble, supreme personality of Godhead. So whereas Sankaracharya argues that everything in this phenomenal world, all the varieties that we experience, all the differences in personality and temperament, they're all a transformation of state. They're one undifferentiated representation of what is essentially a variety-less, undifferentiated, homogeneous force field, and they will all go back to that state. And of course, the most famous and most popular example that the impersonals use is that we're like a drop of water. The drop of water can be extracted from the ocean, but then eventually it becomes cloud, and eventually it goes back and it merges within the ocean. So they're postulating that that in the ocean, so to speak, we have no personality. We only appear to have a personality for some temporary period of time, and then we eventually merge, and we've achieved liberation, we achieve emancipation. We go back to that state where we have no more personality. However, that's not the case. Krishna says, Natu ebaham tutunasham natum nemajanachabam nivisi sarvavayam. Krishna says, by way of directly refuting the impersonalistic philosophy, he says, right there in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, never was there a time, Arjuna, when you did not exist, nor me, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall we ever cease to be. God is asserting himself as eternal, but he's also asserting that all the living beings are eternal as well, though they proceed from him. And in that sense, we are one with God. He is our source. Nevertheless, it is not that this phenomenal world is a transformation of state from some undifferentiated, homogeneous force field. No, we are all emanations. We are all byproducts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One time, Bhaktivedanta Swami, he's Bhaktivedanta Swami now, he wasn't back in those days, said, Prabhupada, I don't understand this impersonal philosophy. It seems confusing. It seems counter to all common sense. It's not what we experience in this world. Every one of us has the sense that we exist now. We have the sense that we existed as individuals in the past. So why wouldn't we continue to exist as individuals in the future? Isn't the idea that insomuch as we've been individuals in the past, as far back as we can remember, and inasmuch as we're individuals in the present, very much so, why do these impersonalists come up with a concocted theory that at some point in future time, we will cease to be who we are? He said, it's very confusing. I don't understand it. So rather than give some answer or some response, Prabhupada said, very good. He says, you recognize it as counterintuitive, as not in harmony with what we observe in our everyday life. It's confusing. Prabhupada says, you don't understand it. That's very good, because it is not to be understood. It is to be rejected. So he congratulated this devotee. Here's an example. I think this is from the third canto, if I'm not mistaken. Yatomagad Vishvulingad. Yatomagad means flames. Vishvulingad means sparks. Dumad means smoke. Vapi, Shah, Shambhavat, Apiatma, Vena Bhimatad, Yaktagnir, Pritagulmakat. Yagnagni is fire. Okay, now fire can be seen in three different ways. It can be seen as flames, it can be seen as sparks, and it can be seen as smoke. So sparks, flame, and smoke are different byproducts of the fire. They're different. For instance, flames are very useful for cooking and warming your house. Sparks can be useful if they're fanned, or they can extinguish if they're not fanned. Smoke is unwanted. There's hardly any practical benefit from smoke. And yet all of these come from fire. The fire is one. The fire is one. And yet the fire manifests itself in various ways. And some of the manifestations of the fire are very, very useful and very, very helpful. Some of them are marginal, and some of them are just plain annoying. You get soot, you get dirt, you get specks in your eye, all of that from the smoke of the fire. And yet the smoke, the sparks, and the flames are all connected because they are fire. They are all categorized under the general umbrella of fire. So the fire is one, and yet it displays itself in different varieties with different levels of meaning and utility. Similarly, it says, Advaitam Achyutam Anandam Anantam Rupam Madhyam Parana Purushana Vyavatam Veda Shuddharabam Adaramatma Pakto Govindam Mari Purusham Tamahang Bhajami. God is one, like the fire, and yet because he himself is full of variety, you read the Krishna book just to get some little glimpse of the variety, the range of Krishna's sensitivity, of his emotions, of his feelings, the power of his attraction for his devotees. And so from that Lord who embeds within him the seeds of all feelings and all emotions that are manifest throughout the entirety of his creation, the Lord emanates byproducts, and those byproducts are variegated. Advaitam Achyutam Anantarupam. The Lord is one, Advaitam. He's one infallible, perfect, unlimited, living being who has no defects. He's not touched by the shortcomings of material nature. At the same time, Ananta, he manifests himself by the process of emanation. This is not transformation of state, this is emanation. He manifests himself in millions and millions of different varieties and different species. Now, a less intelligent person might accept the smoke as fire, or the less intelligent person might accept the sparks as fire, or the less intelligent person might accept the flames as fire. But actually, they're all separate aspects, parts and parcels of the fire. Amarendra tells a story about his childhood. He says his father there in Bombay was very strict. For every 2 hours of study, he allowed the kids 15 minutes of play. But the father was not always home to monitor. So the kids would play as long as the father was away. They would play 15 minutes, 20 minutes, a half, and as much as they could get away with. And when they'd see the father's car pulling into the driveway in the front, they would sneak in the back door and open their books and pretend like they'd been poring over their books for hours. So this cat and mouse game went on almost on a daily basis. And the whole trick was to detect whether the father was home before the father got home and detected that the kids were playing hooky from their studies. And so the kids, sometimes the father would get dropped off by a friend, or sometimes he'd take the Indian version of a taxi. And so while the kids would look out from the backyard periodically into the front to see if the father's car was there, the absence of the father's car did not necessarily mean that the father had not arrived. Of course, if the car was there, or if the car was pulling up, definitely the father would come. So as soon as they saw the car, they would say, Father is here. Now they're not seeing the father, they're seeing the car. And the father, according to his preferences, would have a certain make, a certain model, a certain year car. But they're not seeing the father, they're seeing the car. And as soon as they see the car, they say, the father's here. Now, maybe the car isn't in the parking lot, but there's still a chance that the father's there because he had some other mode of transport. So the kids would look in the back door or sneak around the front and look in the foyer, the shoe room, to see if the father's shoes were there. Now, if the father's shoes were not there, they would say the father's absent. He hasn't arrived home yet. We can go on playing. However, if the father's shoes were there, they would have to go into a code red sort of a situation. Father would have got the jump on them. But when the shoes are there, then they would say to each other, they would look at each other with horror and say, Dad's here, Dad's home. Now, again, they're not seeing the dad, they're just seeing the shoes. But in a sense, the shoes are the father, are they not? Just like the smoke is the fire, the sparks are the fire, the flame is the fire. And yet neither one of them is the whole fire. Neither the smoke, the sparks, the flames can be said, not any one of them can be said to comprise the whole fire. So similarly, this material world has all kinds of varieties in terms of landscape, in terms of species and occupants and inhabitants, and they are all emanating from the Supreme Personality of God, and yet not any one of them can said to be God. It's not that because we say God is spread everywhere, you can worship the rock, you can worship the tree, you can worship the mountain. That's not the case. No single aspect of God's creation can said to be or to comprise the entirety of God's personality. They're all reflective. They are all slivers by which we can intimate the unlimited personality of God. Now, Amaran would go on to use another example also. If the father's shoes were there, because he might have worn another pair of shoes to work. And so the fact of the father's shoes being in the foyer didn't necessarily 100% conclusively mean that the father was home. After all, the car is not in the driveway. And so the fact that the shoes are there in the foyer might indicate the father's home, but not necessarily so, not with 100% certainty. So then they would look inside the door where the father would always put his briefcase. The father never went anywhere without his briefcase. If the briefcase was on the counter, that would be it. QED, Om Tat Sat. The father was definitely home. They're in big trouble. So if the briefcase was there, their eyes would get wide. They would look at it and say, Dad is definitely home. What are we going to do now? Dad will have caught us playing when we're supposed to be studying. So in all those cases, whether there's a car in the driveway, whether there's shoes in the foyer, or the briefcase in the entrance, in each case they'd say Father's here, or at least there's a good possibility that Father's here. But at the same time, Father's not the briefcase, Father's not the shoes, Father's not the car. So in the same way, there's everything. Everything is emanating from God, but everything is not God. The world is comprised of nothing other than the byproducts of God's energy. The inferior energy which emanates from the Lord is earth, air, fire, water, ether, those five gross elements, and then mind, intelligence, and false ego. These are the 8 separated material energies which emanate from the Lord. Then apare amitastu and yambina prakriti mevada jiva bhuta mahabhavo. There's a spiritual energy which emanates directly from the internal potency of the Lord, which are the spirit souls, and they enter into matter, and as a result of that interaction between the individual souls and the material energy, there are 8,400,000 species of life spring up. The fact is that there's a difference between the energy. The energy is not different from the energetic. At the same time, the energy is not the energetic. The sunshine is not the sun. We say oh, the sun feels good on my head today. But and so the sunshine is not different from the sun, but at the same time, the sunshine does not comprehend all the qualities of the sun. First of all, the sun globe is localized, the sunshine is diffused. The sun globe is concentrated. Again, the sunshine is diluted. And perhaps the most important difference between the sunshine and as energy and the energetic source, which is the sun globe, perhaps the most important point, which need to be pointed out, is that the sun globe has a presiding deity, that ultimately everything, the sun globe is presided over, and the sunshine emanates from a personality who is the sun god, known as Surya Narayan or Vivaswan. So the sunshine is the sun globe is the sun, but neither one of them tells the whole story. You have to go to the personality who is the president of the sun, who is the lord of the sun, whose name is Vivaswan. Then you understand the principle of the sun globe as being his proprietary planet, the sunshine as being the effulgence which is emanating as a result of his unlimited potency. So wherever there's energy, there must be energetic. Wherever there's energetic, there must be energy. But the energetic cannot be equated with the energy. Here's another example that I heard. Andra, very famous Kirtaniya. Andra passed away in 2010 due to an unfortunate accident in his room. In 1986, he had established the 24-hour kirtan in the holy place of Vrindavan, which is the village where Krishna appeared and manifested his childhood pastimes. There's a ISKCON Krishna Balaram Mandir there, and very strong presence of devotees from all over the world, Russia, China. There's a huge and continually growing devotee community in Vrindavan. So in 1986, because of the influx of devotees from all over the world in Vrindavan, and also because of the practice amongst the Vrindavan temples of sponsoring 24-hour chanting of names of God. I remember the first time I went to Vrindavan was 1973. We didn't have our own residential facilities. The temple itself was opened in 74, so it must have been incomplete the first year I went. So there was neither residential facilities nor was the Krishna Balaram temple complete. We stayed at a place called the Fogel Ashram, and there weren't enough rooms for all the devotees, so I remember myself, I ended up sleeping under a mosquito net on the roof. It was interesting because all night long you heard the chants going on from different temples. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You start nodding off at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and you hear the chanting. And then you kind of come a little bit up to consciousness at midnight, and you're still hearing the chanting. And then at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, you're hearing the chanting, and not just from one source, but from multiple sources. Some cases, the chanting is a little louder because it's coming from a temple that's closer. And in another case, the chanting is a little fainter because it's coming from a temple maybe a mile or two away. And I'm not sure they used amplification. I don't think they did. But, depending on how many people were chanting and how loud they were chanting, how many instruments you used, how far away they were, you could either just hear it faintly or you could hear it somewhat distinctly. But from at least a half a dozen different sources, chanting would go on all night long. And then I made some further inquiries. I was astounded to learn from some of the devotees who were steeped in the local lore that in many of these temples, the chanting had been going on nonstop for over 600 years. 600 years, 24-hour chanting. Sita Ram, Hare Krishna. In any case, in 1986, I believe it was, could have been 84, but I think it was 86, one of those 2 years, Andra got together a crew of volunteers. He arranged actually had quite a bit of struggle, but eventually he succeeded in arranging that they wouldn't have any other duties except to do 2 4-hour shifts during a 24-hour period. Each one of his crew members would do 2 4-hour shifts, and the temple would provide for them lodging and food, and they wouldn't have to do anything else. That was actually a fight. That took a few years, but he succeeded. So since 1986, it's been 24-hour chanting, and that was founded by Angel. So 96, 2006, 16. So it's almost been 38 years now, 24-hour chanting in their temple. And then Andrew left in 2010. And he made many CDs, many recordings. Now, if you should happen to walk into a room, I don't think we play him so much, but we used to. When we opened our temple here in 2001, we played him a lot. There was a set of CDs called Vrindavan Mellows. We used to play those all the time. Once we transferred to digital, we presented more singers, more variety. But in those days, Andrew was the main guy that you hear over the speaker system in our temple. So someone might come up and they would hear this sound, the soundtrack, and they say, "Who's that?" So you know what I'm going to say, right? We'd say, "This is Andrew." Now, Andrew was in India, you know. We're playing the soundtrack 2001, 2002. He was still physically with us, but not in America, not anywhere near Utah. He was like thousands of miles. He was on the other side of the planet. He was like 10,000 miles away. But when someone walked in and they wanted to know about the music, we'd say, "This is Andrew." Actually, this isn't Andrew. This is his voice. But we commonly say, "This is Andrew." Or someone says, "Who is this?" We say, "This is Andrew." So similarly, whenever you hear the sound of birds, for instance, being carried on the ether, or the sound of music through our sound system, our response should be, "This is Krishna," because Krishna, ether, is an expansion of the subtlest of Krishna's 5 material energies. And so whenever we hear any sound, those who are 10% Krishna conscious, they think this is Krishna. This is Krishna, because ether comes from Krishna. At the same time, ether doesn't describe, it doesn't even begin to describe the full range of sensibilities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's why our title of our talk today is Everything is One and Different. The Mayavadis, they only take the oneness which exists in quality between the Lord and the living beings, but they overlook the difference in quantity. The Lord is great and we're small. The fact that there's an eternal personality of Godhead and that we are eternally separated parts and parcels opens up the whole world of love. Without there being two, the Supreme and his servant, there's no love, there's no rasa, there's no flavor, there's no taste, there's no mellow. Be like eating a mango that's tasteless. Some or other with all these genetically engineered food, these GMHOs and all, you go to the supermarket and you get an orange and it looks great. You know, they pumped it full of color and they've grown it in such a way they've genetically modified it to become really big. But for some or other, when you peel it and you taste it, it has no real juice. It has no real flavor and no real taste. On the other hand, I remember one of my first impressions when I went to India in the late 60s and early 70s was that the fruit didn't present itself as being that appealing. Maybe it was wrinkled and it was a little off color, maybe odd shape, but the taste was amazing. The color of it, the size of it might not have compared with what we find in the supermarkets in America, but the taste was amazing. So that taste is Krishna. Krishna is the taste of naturally grown organic fruit. You play with it, you engineer it, you do GMSO, then not so much. We don't so much say, "This is Krishna," the toxic, chemical, artificial taste. We don't say so much, "This is Krishna." When you drink orange juice, you know, I read about the orange juice that we buy in the store. What they do is, in order to preserve it, in order to keep it from going bad, because they have to transport it, has to sit on the shelf for who knows how long. They have a date, best used by a certain date, and you'll be amazed that date is like 3 months away. So how could fresh juice last for 3 months without going bad? Even if it's refrigerated, it can't. So in order to market modern products, most foods are processed. Processed means they're tampered with to get a long shelf life or get a long refrigerator life. So orange juice, which is described as being fresh and not from concentrated and yada, 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 is really, what do they call that word when they take all the moisture out of it? Dehydrated. There's another word. They have machines that gradually suck all the moisture and make it particles. All the survival companies, they package it. They take the moisture out. Dehydrating. There's another word. I don't know if anyone can tell me on the chat here in Facebook. But anyway, and so that's what's done. They take the liquid, they dehydrate it, they take the liquid out of natural orange juice because that's what's going to cause it to bad. And then they add water, which can sit for a long time. But then the problem is you've got the texture, you've got the fiber, but you don't have any taste. There's absolutely no taste in this reconstituted orange juice. So then some chemists, they've created the flavor of orange juice in the laboratory, and so then they inject this tasteless reconstituted fiber with the taste of orange juice, and then you get fresh, natural, not from concentrated orange juice. So I don't know. That's the taste of Krishna. I don't know if you drink orange juice from the supermarket, you say, that's Krishna. Probably, but it's not Krishna. Anyway, I think you know what I'm saying. Here's our bottom line. This is where we end today. There's a verse wherein Prabhupada says, if you can carve out Krishna from the wood of our life, bring out Krishna from the wood of our life. Within wood, there's fire. The wood represents Krishna, and the fire is Krishna's spiritual energy. Just like smoke is the energy of the fire, sparks are the energy of the fire, flames are the energy of the fire. Now, there's difference between the fire and the smoke. There's difference between fire and the sparks, and there's difference between the fire and the flames. You can use the fire for many useful things. Smoke only irritates, suffocates. It makes you cough. So in this material world, there are all kinds of shapes and varieties. Just like the example is given that from one potter's wheel, many different pots of different weights and destinies and shapes can be made, but the potter and the wheel are the same. They're the same potter and the same wheel, and yet from them come so many different shapes and varieties. So God is one, just like the fire, but from the fire comes smoke, comes sparks, comes flames. The potter is one, the wheel is one, but from that potter and from that wheel come different sizes and shapes and varieties of food. So these represent all the different bodies, all the different species, all the varieties, all in the same planet. And they're all coming through the Brahma Jyoti on the one hand, and through Prakriti, the material energy on the other hand. And all these causes and effects are mingling and interacting and coagulating, with the result is that you get this material world, just like you get reactions from mixing chemicals. So when we look at the fire, there's all kinds of reactions going on. There's more things than we could ever begin to understand happening in the simple fire. From a distance, the fire seems to be burning steadily in the shape of a teardrop, but to look at it closer, to analyze it, there are multiple and constant chemical reactions going on. Similarly, within each and every one of these bodies, the body looks stable, the body looks fixed, the body looks preordained, and yet each and every body is, at any moment, there are millions and millions of chemical actions going on. Food is being digested, the body is being hydrated, there are cells that are fighting infections and building up immunity, externally, it seems like, yeah, it's a body. It's stable. It's the same from day to day and day. But so much is going on with so much complexity and so much detail. So this whole material world has been produced from God, and because God is Purnam, he's full, he's complete, he's perfect, he's unlimited. Every single part of this material world is pre-programmed to run with immense complexity, with immense precision, and everything that we see is nothing more or less than a manifestation of God's unlimited power, his unlimited presence. At the same time, that same God has held himself separate from this creation so that we can chant his holy names, practice devotional service under the direction of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the line of reciprocal sessions, and ultimately go back home to that supreme personality where life is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. Sounds good to me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. What comments we've got here? Rob already told me he's driving, so he won't be able to add any takeaways. Good morning, Natasha. First one to jump on board by Bobby. Second, Namamrita. Namamrita got his visa. Congratulations, Namamrita Das. Your visa was approved. We love you. We love your wife, Bhakti Janani, and we look forward to you serving here for many, 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 many years to come. And Yogesh, Yogi, and Pragna from Dallas. I'll be in Texas next week, but not anywhere near Dallas, unfortunately. Sealy, Texas is about a 30-minute drive east of Houston. Here's another offering. I usually take one of these poetic offerings and I paste it in YouTube when I put up this video. So Natasha says, though different in thought and flesh and creed, each soul unique like scattered seed, no two alike in DNA and print, each one a story, each a distinct hint. Yet in the realm beyond our sight, in the afterlife's eternal light, our differences blend, yet we stand apart, unique forever in Krishna's heart, individual threads in a grand tapestry, woven by divinity in perfect symmetry, bound by love, free yet combined in Krishna ourselves we truly find. Beautiful. Beautiful. You know, you can see the effect of AI, but you can also see that Natasha is getting really good at what her prompts are and what her inputs are. Nowadays, everything's based on your search terms, or in the case of AI, on your prompts. The better the prompts are, the more accurate you're going to get. So when you prompt, don't forget that AI is consume vast amounts of knowledge, and the impersonalistic theories and arguments are probably more prominent. There are probably more of those out there than there are of bhakti. We have many, many authors who written hundreds and thousands of books. We're not unrepresented in the literary world by any means. In fact, nobody is more prolific in writing books than the devotees. But you know, the world has bought into the impersonalistic philosopher. And so not only practicing spiritualists, but academicists and pseudo-spiritualists, they all write their opinions and they all come to an impersonalistic conclusion. We've even had volunteers who come here, they write and they say, I love to come and learn more about bhakti. And then they come, they don't attend the classes. They like the kirtans, they like the prasadam, they like the service, but they neglect to attend the classes, and then they leave here still being impersonalists because they haven't learned about our culture and what we believe in. So my point is that there's probably more impersonalistic literature out there than there is personalism. So you have to be very specific and very precise and very detailed if you want to avail yourself of AI and you want to direct it towards the Vaishnava literatures of bhakti. Then it's a matter of knowing what you want, knowing what you're looking for. And I can see in the output of Natasha that she's getting more sophisticated. she's understanding more and more of what the difference between the personality of God and his creation. And that's reflected in her poetry. So I'll be very happy to post this in the comments section on YouTube. And thank you. Britta is another very articulate, emerging personalist as well, I should say. Sukshma says, loving this armor under a pastime. What a beautiful, simple, down-to-earth, personal story that illustrates a transcendental point. Desiccation. Desiccation. No, I don't know. Desiccate. I don't know if it's desiccate. It's the word I've been looking for. What are those machines? They're quite expensive. They're thousands of dollars. They dehydrate, but or deconstitute. Anyway, it'll come to me. Atma Tattva. Okay, another poet here. All right, Atma Tattva. He does some rap music in South Africa. Death be weaned, fade into the burning milk, simmer you teething soul, slither collecting marbles with that pomegranate fiend. You are the one full friend of this field of work, battlefield of activities of butchery and divinely hectic scenes. Death be true, be unscreened, be the reality of all from which we've come. Hold the hails and activities and divinely hectic scenes. Be the bubbling of toxic waste and completely beautiful things we've not yet met or seen in divinely hectic scenes. Be the perfect pyramid scheme for collecting credit for nonsense things and forgetting the merit of divinely hectic scenes. There's a refrain here, I think it has to do with divinely hectic scenes. Be that queen, be that sharp edge of a mirror that catches the shimmer of bliss, but not the truth of divinely hectic beings. He is and he isn't, simultaneous oneness and difference, yet remains the truth of all divinely hectic beings. Be the truth that is a truth to give the most to thoughts, the truths of the most divinely hectic being. And then he says as a postscript, love that you mentioned Einderbu recently sampled him to make beats for accompanying recorded poetry. We'd like to get some of your rap over here. I look to South Africa as the place where the best Krishna rap would come from. So you guys have a high standard to live up to. Please give us a sample. Well, thanks very much. And thanks, Rob. We'll miss Rob's takeaways because he's not able to pen them. He's driving today. I don't know where Brent is today. Something happened. He's usually first or second on board. So maybe tomorrow. This has been Transcendental Tuesday. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I learned a lot. Thanks very much for giving me the platform, taking the time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.